Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, speaking to you from an undisclosed location, my studio. Why is North Korea even talking to the United States? This is the question I'd like to ask. Trump's policy on North Korea has been all over the place, just like his policy on almost everything, though the word policy might be overgenerous to describe his erratic outbursts. But so far we've not had a Third World War. For this, I have to give him some due credit. Well, the reason why the People's Democratic Republic of Korea is parleying with South Korea, with the United States, is because China is playing ball. The sanctions are biting. So the Chinese are doing minimal trade with the North Koreans, which is why their economy is screaming. The Chinese have a stranglehold on North Korea. About 90% of North Korea's commerce is with China, selling coal and a few manufactured goods to the Chinese, and the Chinese can simply exploit the North Koreans as cheap labor. So the North Korean people really are human resources for their savagely cruel regime. Whilst the head of a so-called egalitarian state dwells in unexampled opulence. It's ineffably unjust. This for a society which is supposed to be predicated on the notion of human dignity and social justice. So the North Korean economy is being strangled. It's got to a level that's worried. Even Kim Jong-un, he may not be able to keep his cronies in swill, so has to keep them in some sort of luxury. I don't think there's a high chance to be ousted though, but may not be able to afford to maintain his arms and his nuclear weapons. So the Chinese plainly want this sorted out. They would like to see a détente. If they didn't, they could cheat on sanctions and just trade with the North Koreans more than they're allowed to. And what's anybody going to do about it? Who's going to take on China? It's far too big a beast to be tamed. It's an important trade partner for almost every country in the world, and nobody has the balls to start a trade war with them, despite what Trump says. So the Chinese are not cheating on sanctions. They would like to see a détente. They do not want to see a nuclear war, because that would impact on them, even if they remain neutral. Because the nuclear weapons don't really know boundaries, and there'd be millions of North Korean refugees flooding China illegally, and they don't want to see the North Korean regime collapse. South Korea get stronger, possibly get hold of those nuclear weapons, a more prosperous neighbor, which could be somewhat of a rival to them, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to see US troops on their border in North Korea. So they want to maintain the status quo within reason. The North Koreans, of course, could aim their nuclear weapons at China. So China, to some extent, is on the tiger's back, very difficult to get off without getting eaten. So it's a crazier, much crazier version of the Chinese. Whatever you think of the Chinese government, is they are rational. They have certain long-term objectives, and they pursue them. They're very placid. And they've shown enormous restraint in not simply invading Taiwan, which they could easily do. They would very, very easily win. Don't know why on earth the US is saying we'll defend Taiwan. Let it be part of the People's Republic of China. That's been US policy for 45 years. Anyway, the Chinese like to see a détente, and then more trade and more wealth going around. But other countries could assist North Korea. Other countries would like to see the regime firm up. If they could stiffen the spine of the North Koreans by giving them aid, sending them food, whatever it is they need, and then if North Korea was more truculent, that would put the United States on the back foot. An obdurate North Korea would keep the USA distracted from the Middle East and other areas of the world. So there are other countries who would like to see North Korea doing well and being more of a headache for the United States to divert attention from Iraq, Syria, other zones where the United States is trying to pursue different policies, project power, and so on. So the USA can only take on so many enemies at a time. This is called imperial overstretch. To be at action in many points in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, would be North Korea, goodness knows where else. And so that's that. That's why the North Koreans are considering going to Singapore to meet President Trump. Is also to enhance the status of North Korea. They very much like the idea of being taken seriously and meeting a serving US president. No previous North Korean despot has met a current US president. They've met people who've since stepped down from the office, but not someone who's actually occupying the Oval Office at the moment. So it would be a fillip to their esteem.